Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I am Brian Nemhauser. You can find me on Twitter and on Instagram at Hawk Blogger. And today's a fun day. Today, we are going to tell tales of woe about our beloved San Francisco 49ers. And we'll have to be a little creative. It's a pretty darn good team, and everybody already knows that. But what they don't know is that this 49er team and these 49er fans realize there are some flaws in there. There are some weaknesses that could really take this team down. There are some scenarios that are nightmare scenarios for this 49er team. I will walk through a few of those. We may come up with a few more as we go along. There can never be enough. Let's talk about it and just cherish every potential 49er failure because, frankly, it's been as much fun watching the 49ers fail to take advantage of being the most talented roster in football for years as almost anything else that's been going on in the NFL. So why not? Let's talk about it a little bit. There's a few of these storylines I've been kind of thinking about, and I figured I'd kind of pull them all together into one show, and we just talk about how things can go wrong for San Francisco this year. Before I get into all of that, I do want to wish one of my most loyal listeners, maybe my most loyal listener, a very happy birthday. Mom, if you're out there listening to the show, happy birthday. Looking forward to seeing you for lunch. We'll get some Mexican food, which is kind of a family thing, tradition. So looking forward to that, but happy birthday to you. And if you didn't listen to Real Hawk Talk last night, I highly recommend it. It was a fun show, episode 318. It is up now on your favorite podcasting platforms. We're going to get that posted much more rapidly going forward. So hopefully, if not the same night, definitely by the next morning. And I will be helping out with all that to get it going. But great show with Evan Hill. Great show with Jeff Simmons. And one of the things that came in the comments, besides people really enjoying the episode, was people really want Jeff to get better lighting. So we're working on it. We've got his mic improved. Next step, we'll look at getting that lighting improved. Maybe we'll get the camera improved. Eventually, we're going to get Jeff plastic surgery. We're going to make him look like, I don't know. I can't pick. Anyone I pick would probably be a bad choice. But anyway, we are improving Jeff's situation, and he's such an important part of the show and brings such great stuff. We want to make sure that everybody can see and hear him clearly. So appreciate you guys giving some feedback. It helps improve the show along the way. I can't do anything about Evan Hill. Evan is whoever he is. Technology cannot help Evan Hill. So if you're hoping for changes there, good luck. But no, seriously, it was a good show last night, a lot of fun, and we went through a bunch of content that I'd recommend you check out. But let's talk about 49ers nightmares. Can we do that? Should we do that? Of course we should do that. If there's one thing that should put a smile on any Seahawks fan's face, it is the idea that something could go wrong for the San Francisco 49ers. This is a fan base that is the most hateable fan base maybe in all of sports. I mean, Yankees fans are up there. Lakers fans at times have been there. If there is a contest, maybe we will do another show where we just talk about the most hated fan bases in pro sports, but the 49ers have to be up there. I thought it was just that Seahawks fans obviously have a rivalry with the 49ers after we've moved into the NFC West back in the early 2000s. But you talk to Packers fans, you talk to Chiefs fans. I mean, the Chiefs The Chiefs literally sold some company sold 49ers tears, bottled 49ers tears as a product after the Super Bowl. And I mean, 49ers fans are just miserable. In general, they are miserable. Now, I worked for many, many years in tech and worked for many years in a company that was based in the Bay Area. So for me, that meant a lot of time talking to fans who were, 49ers fans. And there are different groups of 49ers fans. There's kind of the casual 49ers fans that are fine. They're just like any other fan, and that's fine. Um, but then there is the stabby 49ers fans. I mean, literally 49ers fans that have stabbed each other. They've stabbed other fans. They are they tried to dox Evan. They doxed me because, we were having fun on Twitter. There's just trashy people. And so I love it. I mean, some of my favorite moments were watching those fans destroy their big screen TVs after the Super Bowl. Just lose their ever loving mind as the 49ers misery continues, having not won a championship in 30 years. Like, it's great because that will for as long as that lasts, that is going to be the conversation stopper with 49ers fans. They try to talk about how many the rings that they have, but honestly, almost none of them that talk about that were alive when they won them. So I wanted to spend a few minutes talking about this team. I also just on the flip side, and I'll be very judicious with my positive statements or compliments, but this is a hell of a team. I don't think I need to tell anybody that. I mean, it is a very, very talented roster. And it's a team that has the best player. We talk about blue chips on the Seahawks. The 49ers don't only have blue chips, they have the blue chip of the platinum chip, the best player at positions at various spots on the roster. It's not even that they just have one, they have multiple. So it is an incredibly talented crew. It takes luck, good fortune, takes a bunch of things for them not to win any given week and for them not to win a ring. So part of today is to give us as much hope as possible that their drought continues. So let's get into it. I only had time to prepare a few visuals. We'll go into beyond what the visuals support, but there's a few things that I want to bring up relative to our hated 49ers. So let's get into it. First up, Trent Williams' health. Yes, I'm not cheering for injury. So don't, anyone out there that's like, oh, Seahawks fans want players to get hurt. No, that's not what I'm saying. But if you're a 49er fan and you want to know their number one nightmare, it is that Trent Williams at age, what is he now? 36? That Trent Williams, 36-year-old tackle, best left tackle in football for years now, Hall of Fame player, that he goes down with some sort of injury. That is their worst nightmare. And this happened to give you some idea of how important Trent Williams is to this 49ers team. As stacked as it is, as good of an offensive coach as Kyle Shanahan is, the wizard, as well as Brock Purdy played, there were 4 games last year where Trent Williams did not play the full game. Cleveland Browns, the Jacksonville Sorry. And then he missed the next 2 games. Let me double check that. I had it somewhere. Uh, yes, the Minnesota Vikings and the Cincinnati Bengals. So he missed those 2 games completely. And then he played only part of the Baltimore game. And the 49ers record in those 4 games was 0-4. It's not hard to put 2 and 2 together. This guy is so crucial to how the 49ers operate. They are a run-oriented team. He is the best run blocking, maybe the best run blocking offensive lineman in football. And when he goes out, things go haywire. If you want to talk about some of Brock Purdy's worst games last year, go check out the games where Trent Williams was out. These 4 games I just talked about, his PFF grades in those games, passing 41.4, 61.9, 66.1, and 62.8. Those were 4 of his worst games of the season. So Trent Williams is absolutely crucial because he's their only offensive lineman that is worth pretty much anything. The other guys, I was just listening to the 49er offensive line coach. He had a good clip about how you just need the lineman to be just good enough. And then there's all sorts of things you can do to help them with chipping, with shifting the line, with blah, blah, blah. I'm telling you, you take the linchpin out, you take the keystone out of Trent Williams, and all of a sudden you can't help everybody. I want to know, you tell me who you think. Can anyone in this audience, without looking, can anyone in this audience name the backup left tackle for the 49ers? Can anybody name the backup left tackle for the 49ers? I'll give you a few more seconds. Nobody's jumping up quickly on this one. I didn't know it, so just so you know. Backup left tackle, his name is Jalen Moore. Jalen Moore. Who is Jalen Moore? Let's look him up. Jalen Moore. I mean, everybody knows Jalen Moore. He was the 155th pick in the 2021 draft, and he played at Western Michigan. I think if you've ever heard, of a guy that is destined to be the next Trent Williams, it's got to be Jalen Moore. So yeah, this is a huge, huge area of concern for the 49ers. And you can't say, well, it's not a big deal. He's 36. He is not getting younger. His durability is not going to get better. And he played the fewest snaps last year that he's played since he was in San Francisco. By a pretty decent margin. San Francisco has been very fortunate that he has been able to stay healthy for this run that they've had. But I don't think you can count on that with a 36-year-old tackle. Look at David Bakhtiari. He's been a great player for many years. Injuries really have waylaid his career after he got older. The other thing that I don't have on here, but I wanted to share as well, that's even maybe more insidious than injury. As we talk about age, Trent Williams very quietly, no one wants to talk about it because he's the GOAT or, whatever. People, maybe the best left tackle ever played, depending on who you ask. I'm not saying he's better than Walter. I'm just telling you, people talk about him that way. He slipped a little bit last year. His numbers slipped a little bit last year. Not saying he's bad because he's not. He's extremely good. But what if I told you last year was his lowest graded year as a 49er? What if I told you his pass block grade, which was 79.8, which is very good, definitely above average. That was his lowest pass block grade since 2012. The year before, his pass block grade was 87.6. The year before that, 86.0. So he was not quite the same dominant pass blocker that he's been. He was very good, and I would take him over pretty much anyone else at left tackle. But what if we're talking nightmares, what if the old man is slowing down? What if he's healthy, but he's just not as good? Also qualifies as a nightmare for that team. And something that I would be wanting to check if I was a 49ers fan, and I would be holding my breath, because if I told you that Trent Williams was the 15th ranked tackle in pass blocking last year, I don't think anybody else would believe me, but it's the truth. He was the 15th ranked tackle as far as pass blocking last year. Of course, I'm going to qualify these things. Would the Seahawks kill to have an 80 graded pass blocker at left tackle? You better believe it. We would be dancing in the streets if Charles Cross got a 79.8 pass block grade in 2024. So I'm not kidding ourselves here, but what if that's not the bottom? What if he's going to keep sliding? What if he is a 75 graded pass blocker this year? What if his knees are just not going to let him move the way he used to move? Don't know. But if we're talking nightmares, that is up there for the 49ers faithful that are rarely faithful when their team is not good. All right, let's keep going on nightmares for the 49ers. Here's one that I've been eager to find the right place and time to talk about, and it might as well be now. A lot of folks are like, oh man, the 49ers upgraded their edge rush opposite of Nick Bosa. They signed Leonard Floyd. Leonard Floyd was he was the man last year. Leonard Floyd had 10 and a half sacks for the Bills last year. He's had at least 9 sacks for the last 4 years. We all know he was pretty effective with the Rams. He caused problem for the Seahawks when he was with the Rams. And so you look at just the sacks and you're like, yeah, they did something there. But if you track kind of his progression, Leonard Floyd, who is 32 years old, is absolutely showing signs of slowing down. And he had, I mean, maybe his worst season. In fact, these aren't even the right numbers. I've got to correct these numbers. I'm going to do this in real time, folks. You're going to watch me edit here. Whoops. Let's go back to this. This isn't even the real number. It is 56.3. Somehow I got the wrong number here. Run defense. That's right. And pass rush was 62.1. All right. Let's go back to sharing this. So this is a guy who has steadily declined in all measures as a defender over the last 3 seasons. For people that are listening and not watching, I will read them to you. Leonard Floyd's overall grade went from 73.8 in 2021 to 65.7 in 2022. And then last year, it dipped all the way down to 56.3. From a run defense perspective, he went from 66.6 to 58.3 to 56.1. These are not good grades. Pass rush, he went from 75.2 to 65.1 to 62.1. So you put those together, his grades last year were 56 overall, 56 as a run defender, and 62 as a pass rusher. And so sometimes what can happen is you get those counting stats, the sacks in this case, that are sexy, but your actual production as a pass rusher is not the same. Let me take a look. I haven't done this yet, but I'll take a look at pass rush just as a overall look for last year for edge defenders. And I'll look both at where he ranked as a pass rusher from a grade perspective, and I will look at where he ranked from a win rate percentage. Okay. And so pass rush grade overall, let's find Mr. Floyd. Leonard Floyd ranked 81st out of 120 edge pass rushers last year. 81st. Okay. Not great. From a win rate perspective, percentage of pass rush snaps where he won, Leonard Floyd ranked 77th out of 120. His pass rush win percentage was 9.9%. Let me go back really quickly and let's look at where he was 2 years ago, just as a comparison. Where was Leonard Floyd 2 years ago from a win percentage on pressures? Takes a little while for it to think about that, but my guess is that we're going to go, he was 9.9 last year. My guess is that he was probably 15% 2 years ago, something along those lines. He was 14% 2 years ago. He ranked 24th in the NFL, right around Khalil Mack. So you've got a guy, he was like basically like Trey Hendrickson, Khalil Mack, those level of guys. And then you come to last year and he was well down the list at 9.9%. It's not the worst possible pass rush win percentage, but it's certainly not what he was. And I'm curious, they also have true pass set, pass rush grade. Where did Lloyd fall in that last year? Let's find out. He ranked 77th in true pass set, pass rush grade. That's when everybody knows it is going to be a pass rush situation. So, you've just got a guy here who has really shown signs of degrading. And the 49ers quietly were not a great pass rush team. Let's take a look here. I'm going to take a look at where the 49ers ranked overall as far as pass rush grade. Oh, they actually got a pretty decent pass rush grade last year. I thought, maybe I'm wrong. Always happy to admit this. But if we look at pressure rate, I think I can find this other ways. Go to another site. I think that the 49ers were not one of the top pass rushing teams. So sacks, sack percentage. I will find this in a second. You guys might not even be curious, but I am. So I'm going to look at this. Last season, the 49ers defensive stats, team defense. Where did they rank in pressure rates? Here we go. Pressure rate. Okay. So I was kind of right. 49ers ranked 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. They ranked 17th in the NFL in pressure rate last year. And I would bet that if I looked at games where the 49ers did not have a lot of pressure, and I could do that, but I don't want to keep you guys waiting as I look up stats. I would bet it has a decent effect on games that they win versus games that are close, win going away versus games that are close. This is also a team, it's interesting for them to rank 17th in pressure rate when they were ahead almost the entire season. I mean, they were ahead by lots the entire season. That is when pass rushers can just pin their ears back and go after all the time. So you'd expect them to have a higher pressure rate than the typical team because you're going to have more teams trying to pass to catch up. That's usually when you're going to be able to create pressure. So I would just keep an eye on Leonard Floyd. He is pretty crucial to this pass rush being interesting. And I think there's reason to believe he is not the player that others are going to think with 10.5 sacks. One other guy, well, I'll save this for later when we get to non-visuals content. But there's another guy I'd want to kind of talk about in this regard. All right, so Leonard Floyd is another potential nightmare for the 49ers. And I will just call out, pay attention to that run defense grade. That will come up here in a bit as well. Right now, as a matter of fact. What people don't realize is that the 49ers defense slipped overall last year. It was not what it had been for many years. from 2020 to 2022, the 49ers had the number 1 ranked run defense in the NFL by EPA per rush. Last year, that went down to 26th in the NFL. So if you're looking at this image I've got here for you, on the left-hand side is their 2022 ranking. On the right-hand side is their 2023, and the way to read that is vertical drop. Vertical is where they ranked with run defense. And last year or 2 years ago, they were number 2. But what I said before, which is also true, is if I showed you the 2020 to 2022 cumulative aggregate, they would be number 1. But you can see this drop, precipitous drop from number 2 in 2022 to number 26 last year in run defense. And this was a real issue for the 49ers. And I think you could argue this is the thing that cost them a ring as much as anything else, and almost cost them a chance of getting to the Super Bowl in the first place. So the 49ers gave up over 100 yards rushing 6 times during the regular season. They gave up 234 yards to the Arizona Cardinals. So keep an eye on that. They gave up 160 to the Browns, 134 to the Bengals. A number of these games, every game that they lost, every single game that they lost last year, they gave up at least 100 yards rushing. Now, it wasn't a guarantee they would lose if they did that, but I'm telling you, in every game that they did lose, they gave up at least, well, I just lied to you. Sorry. The Vikings only had 74 yards. I missed that. Let's correct it. But in 4 of their 5 losses, they gave up 100 yards rushing or more. And some people will say game script and teams that are winning rush, whatever. I'm telling you, the run defense was part of the problem for them. And then, folks, when you get into the playoffs last year, this run defense got shredded. First round against the Packers, 136 yards rushing. Second round against the Lions, 182 yards rushing. And then in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs, they gave up 130 yards rushing. And let's go back and relive the final drive for a second. Final drive. I'm just curious. Yeah. And in that case, a lot of it was some quarterback scrambles, but there was a decent chunk of rushing yards on that final drive. And you had, let's see, a lot of it came from Patrick Mahomes. He had 66 yards rushing in that game. But in any event, rush defense was an issue for the 49ers. And this is something that could get worse. Dre Greenlaw was one of their best run defenders last year. He is likely to miss the first 4 games of the season. You don't know if he's going to be the same player when he comes back. And we just talked about the fact that Leonard Floyd was really bad in defending the run. if you want to know, I mean, they had Chase Young last year for a decent chunk of the year. He wasn't great at defending the run, but he was better than Leonard Floyd. And so if you want to run around the right side against the 49ers, I think there's reason to think you can do that. Javon Hargrave, their massive free agent addition from last year, he had a 49.0 grade against the run last year. That is not good. And he, by the way, that's not new. He had a 48.2 grade in 2022. He had a 30.6 grade in 2021 and a 48.1 in 2020. So he has been below 50 graded against the run for 4 straight years. I'm not going to say that the reason the 49ers went from best against the run to 26th against the run is just because of Javon Hargrave, but I'm not going to say it's not either. I mean, he is a problem. Their edge rusher opposite of Nick Bosa is a problem. Dre Greenlaw being injured is a problem. So I think you got to have at least some question about how the 49ers are going to hold up against physical teams. I think if I'm the Rams with that offensive line that they put together, I am licking my chops. You want to beat Kyle Shanahan? Don't let him have his offense on the field. So this is another, I think, relatively quiet trend because everyone just thinks the 49ers are the best at everything and scary in everything, but they were not a good run defense. And the other thing I'll say is overall, they slipped a little bit on defense. This has like been a high flying defense. They were 10th in EPA per play last year. I'm going to go ahead and do a quick check on DVOA. Never know. This could tell me the exact opposite and ruin my narrative. Yeah, I mean, 49ers ranked 4th in DVOA in defense last year. Not terrible for sure, but in general, 49ers defense slipped a little bit last year, and on run defense slipped quite a bit. The next, they made a big move this year. They let Eric Armstead go, and they essentially replaced him with Malik Collins from the Texans. And this could be absolutely brutal for, sorry, I'm going to get this going again. And I also want to see, you guys are going to see me do some editing real time because I'm just curious if I can get this to work. Should be able to loop. Why can't I get this to loop? Well, that's silly. In any event, will it let me do that? No, it won't. Too bad. All right. Well, we'll present. You guys will just watch the video just one more time. But Eric Armstead was one of their best players on defense, and they traded him out with a guy who some people are trying to tell you is a better player. I've heard this on 49ers. I've seen it on 49ers Twitter and on some of their podcasts. And the main reason that they say that is because, oh, Malik Collins is available. He doesn't miss games. Well, great, I guess. But if I look at Eric Armstead, the last 2 years he missed some snaps. Last year he played 661 snaps. Last year Malik Collins played 698. So I think that's a wash, folks. And if you look at him from a player perspective, Eric Armstead last year, 78 overall grade. His run defense grade was not great, but he historically has been a good run defender. That has eroded over the years, but it's still not good. Not great last year. His pass rush grade last year was 86.5. That was the highest of his career. He had 58 pressures last season. Malik Collins, you're talking about a 61 grade overall, 44 against the run, and 68.4 pass rush grade. He had 45 pressures. So it's close on pressures, but let's do the pressure rate thing again. Let's check and see, because my bet is that that Malik Collins is not the player that Eric Armstead is when it comes to pass rush. Eric Armstead was 7th in the NFL last year in pass rush grade among interior defensive linemen. And Malik Collins was 42nd. When we go to win rate, the win percentage, Eric Armstead was 11th. His win rate was 14.6%. Malik Collins was 34th at 11.5. So, I mean, by any measure, Eric Armstead is significantly better as a player than Malik Collins. So anyone that's going to try to tell you that the 49ers upgraded there, they're kidding themselves. And I think Malik Collins is a fine player. I don't think he's bad. But Eric Armstead he's a legitimately, he can change games by himself. And the 49ers defense at its peak had Eric Armstead and DeForest Buckner and Nick Bosa. It is a far cry. I mean, you're now looking at Nick Bosa, Javon Hargrave, who I just told you had a awful run defense grade for years, Malik Collins, and Leonard Floyd. That is not the same. That is a huge, that defense was built around that defensive line. I think the erosion of that defensive line is quietly, just like erosion in real life. It's happening quietly, but man, when you actually discover what's going on, your house may just about be ready to fall in the river. So they've got a lot riding on Malik Collins, on Leonard Floyd. I don't know how that's going to work out for them. So as far as nightmares go, if Malik Collins and Leonard Floyd are just the same guys they were last year, this run defense is going to be worse, or at least not better than the 26th best. I think there's a chance that with Dre Greenlaw out, I mean, you're going to put more pressure on the linebackers. As great of a player, and he is as great of a player as Fred Warner is, he is 230 pounds. And if your front four cannot keep him clean, he's going to have a much harder time being the type of player that he's been for all these years. I think there's a chance that teams are going to run right up the middle against this defense. Where's the hammer? Dre Greenlaw was the hammer from a linebacker perspective. Eric Armstead was a hammer from the interior perspective. Where's the hammer inside that you feel like you can't push off the ball? When it's third and short, if you run to the middle or you run to the right side against this 49ers team, how confident are you that you're going to be able to move them? And those are going to be some plays that really matter throughout the season. So that's another piece here where I'd call out. This is the last visual I had. So I'll kind of rewind. I'll rewind and we'll just talk in general for a little bit now. I think that there's there's at least a few other nightmares for the 49ers. Some of the obvious ones are they were pretty fortunate with Christian McCaffrey last year. He basically did not miss a snap. And it was just 2 years ago, 2021. He missed most of that season. The year before, 2020, he missed most of that season. And the thing with Christian McCaffrey is that he missed time with head injuries, with concussions at times. He has had shoulder injuries. He's had ankle injuries. So this is a guy that I think in historically has been a bit of an injury risk. The 49ers have been on the positive side of variance with Christian McCaffrey, having played pretty much every snap. He is a huge fulcrum for that offense. And you talk about him and Trent Williams, those two together. I already talked about some of Trent Williams' erosion and his injuries that started cropping up. McCaffrey's another guy that I think you got to keep an eye on when it comes to staying on the field. As much as they use him, as much as teams as he takes a lot of contact, he goes down. That is a huge hit for Brock Purdy. I'm not listing Brock Purdy as a nightmare as much because I think what they ask him to do and what he's good at is going to stay married pretty well. So some people might say that Brock Purdy comes back to earth would be a nightmare. I don't see it. I just don't see it. I think he's going to be good. I think he's going to be better in some ways as he goes into his third year. Full off season. Last year, he was rehabbing from that elbow injury. You could say maybe he gets hurt again, but I mean, you could say that about every team's quarterback. So I don't think that's particularly interesting to talk about. But he's not someone I think about as much as like, oh, he's the nightmare scenario. I do think it's worth talking about George Kittle. George Kittle is a guy who is getting up there. He's 31. And he's a guy that has missed snaps in past seasons. They had very positive injury luck last year with him. He is someone who fought through a lot last year health-wise. Deebo Samuel is always a guy to keep an eye on, as much as he's been a big part of their team. They had pretty positive injury fortunes with him last year. Not perfect, but pretty positive. But, expecting Deebo Samuel to go a full year without having injuries creep up is something worth paying attention to. I don't know if this is a nightmare. I don't think Brandon Ayuk is going to let his contract situation affect his play on the field. But they've got a messy wide receiver room situation. They just signed Juwan Jennings to a 2-year deal, which I think generally is smart. I think Jennings is a clutch player for them. He's one of their best run blockers as a receiver. But you've just drafted Ricky Pearsall, and you've already had Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel. What are they going to do there? How is that going to work out? And one of the things that happens with Super Bowl losing teams is it is just natural for players to start to think a little bit about, well, what am I getting out of this? Like, what's my situation? Because if we're not going to win the ring, I got to make sure I'm taking care of myself. And I just have to wonder if there is any kind of adversity for the 49ers, what's going to happen in that receiver room? Let's say Trent Williams goes down for a little bit, and let's say that they lose a few games. Let's say that the defense is not as good as it is perceived to be, and that the run defense becomes even worse. Does that group stick together, or does it splinter? I have my questions there. Deebo and Ayuk there's questions for both of them. So I think that is another aspect that is worth kind of monitoring with that team. Otherwise, I mean, what have I missed? What nightmare scenarios are you guys seeing that I'm not talking about? I think you could talk about Jair Brown being he's the presumptive starter at safety, second year. He had a decent rookie season, but Tayshaun Gibson was a big part of that team, he was kind of like the Juwan Jennings of their defense, and he's not coming back. They're going to go with Jair Brown. Is he going to be as good? He was not a well-graded tackler last year. He was a 57 graded tackler. Tayshaun Gibson, 73. He was always a very sure tackler. What else? I mean, I think those are the main things that we've covered here. And this is a team that has so much going for it. It can afford for one of these nightmares to potentially happen, but it depends on which one. The Trent Williams one of all of them is the one to worry about if you're a 49er fan. He is the overall keystone for the way that team is put together. And if he's healthy, they're going to be good. If he's not, or if he starts to continue to fade a little bit as he ages, then that team is different. And Brock Purdy will have to be more than what he's been, not just what he's been, but more than what he's been in order to compensate. So that is my collection currently of 49er nightmares. If you haven't already given the show a like and click subscribe, please do. Appreciate it. Hopefully you guys are enjoying all of this content as we go through. And if you haven't already, join here as a YouTube member. The link is pinned into chat. It's also in the description of the video. It's a great way to support the show and to show up in the chat with a special emblem. Here's one such person, Swedish Shinobi, one of our members. You can see the little emblem next to his name. He says, "Ugh, I didn't want to be late for this one, but someone decided to oversleep their alarm, and my son needed to be driven to school. It was me. I slept through the alarm." Go Hawks. Well, lucky for you, Swedish Shinobi, you can get the show from the beginning whenever you want. And for patron members, patreon.com/hawkblogger, you can get the audio version of the show almost immediately after the show finishes. So please consider supporting the show that way. You also get immediate access to the Slack channel. You also get to ask us questions for the Real Hawk Talk show every week. It's a great place. There's a lot of Mariners talk that goes on in there. There's other talk happening. So if you want to be the ultra supporter of the show, patreon.com/hawkblogger and join as a YouTube member. It is a great way to, I think, enhance your overall experience, meet some other cool folks, and help us increase our charitable donation, which will be in August this year. Hoping it's a big one, and you guys are all part of making that happen. All right. I am Brian Nemhauser. You can find me on Twitter or on Instagram at hawkblogger. We'd love to get more Instagram followers so we can grow that channel. I hope you all have a great day. And this has been another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. Take care.